He wasn't tall, he wasn't powerful, and he wasn't the kind of athlete scouts usually drool over. In fact, many doubted he'd ever make it in professional football at all. Cole Palmer was the exact opposite of what you imagine when you think of a Premier League superstar. No blistering pace, no towering frame, no flashy physique. Yet somehow, this so-called unathletic kid from Manchester would go on to shock the football world. At just 21 years old, Palmer became one of the most decisive young players in English football history. Incredibly, he featured in 6 major finals, directly contributing to 8 goals, and lifting 4 trophies, numbers that most established stars could only dream of. Every time the pressure was at its highest, Palmer delivered with an ice-cold composure that silenced critics and stunned rivals. The question is, how did a player who was once told he didn't have the physical tools to survive, transform into one of the most valuable and clutch performers of his generation? Let's uncover the journey. From Withershore, a small and quiet corner of Manchester, there are no dazzling stadium lights or thunderous crowds. Instead, the game lives in its simplest form: muddy Sunday league pitches behind Tesco car parks, where dreams are stitched together in the rain. Imagine a little boy in a raincoat, sitting on a bag of footballs, staring at the pitch as if the match unfolding in front of him decided his future. That boy was Cole Palmer. His love for the game was no accident, it was inherited. His father, Scott, had spent more than 20 years battling it out in Sunday league football. He was no superstar, but he knew every bruise, every sliding tackle, every last-minute winner, and he carried with him a gritty understanding of what the game demanded. He wanted better for his son. Scott envisioned a future for Cole that went beyond muddy fields, and he dedicated himself to making that dream possible. But there was a problem. Cole was smaller than most boys his age. He was physically slight, fragile even, and in the ruthless world of academies, size often determined opportunity. Coaches overlooked him time and time again. Yet his father refused to let size define him. Instead, Scott turned this obstacle into a lesson. If Cole could not overpower his opponents, he would have to outthink them. He drilled into him the importance of technical mastery, sharper decision-making, and football intelligence. Cole began studying the game with obsession. Every sound, the crunch of a tackle, the roar of a coach, the roll of the ball across wet grass, he absorbed it all. After school, his words were always the same: "Dad, let's go to the park." Even when academy challenges grew heavier, his father had a plan. He built a personalized training routine that forced Cole to rely on quick feet, clever passing, and tactical awareness instead of brute force. This upbringing gave him a competitive edge, a determination to beat opponents with his brain rather than his body. Still, Palmer's heart lay with Manchester United, the club he supported as a boy. When United invited him for a trial, it felt like destiny. But reality struck hard. United would only let him train, never play matches. Across the city, Manchester City offered something different: Friday night games, real opportunities to shine. At just 6 years old, Cole faced his first great dilemma: follow his heart or follow his future. He chose City. It broke him inside, but with his father's guidance, he accepted the hard truth. Scott reminded him that ambition mattered more than sentiment. The decision was bittersweet, but it laid the path toward a career in professional football. At City's academy, Cole remained painfully shy. He barely spoke, and when he scored, he often froze, waiting for teammates to celebrate for him. Some called it humility, others thought it was nerves, but it was simply who he was. Quiet, reserved, but deadly with the ball at his feet. His celebration was his football: precise technique, perfect timing, and ruthless execution. Meanwhile, as Palmer grew through City's youth ranks, Manchester United were thriving. They were still a powerful force in English football, winning both at senior and academy level. For a boy who had grown up idolizing the Red Devils, watching them succeed while he played across the city must have stung deeply. Yet that pain added fuel. Instead of dwelling on what he had lost, he sharpened what City valued: his creativity, his instincts, his street football intelligence. City's academy began to embrace his unique style, giving him confidence he might never have found at United. But doubts still lingered. By 16, his size once again put him at risk of being released. For many young players, that would have been the end. But Cole had 2 powerful supporters who refused to let him slip away: his father, Scott, and City's academy director, Jason Wilcox. They recognized the same thing: a relentless hunger. Cole might not have been the biggest or the strongest, but he had the one quality that mattered most: obsession. No setback could shake him. No defender could intimidate him. For Palmer, the only thing that existed was the ball, the pitch, and the game in front of him. Cole Palmer's story at Manchester City wasn't a fairy tale of instant success. On the surface, it looked like a golden ticket, entry into one of the best academies in the world, a direct path to Champions League glory. But the reality was harsher. For years, it felt less like a dream and more like purgatory. He was there, wearing the badge, training in the state-of-the-art facilities, but still felt like an outsider. Palmer was close enough to touch the first team, yet never quite inside the room. He looked like a City product in the making, but deep down, he knew he was stuck in between, too good for the academy, not yet trusted for the senior team. And at Manchester City, progress was never rushed. Players were not unleashed. They were built like machines, slowly, carefully, and systematically. The environment was pristine, but also ruthless. Every training session was an audition, every game an exam. Competition was everywhere, from every age group, all packed with talent. Palmer had natural elegance on the ball. He could glide through challenges, pick passes early, and almost converse with the ball in a way that felt unique. Yet at City, that wasn't enough. The academy demanded more: explosive pace, physicality, and pressing power. Palmer wasn't that type. He was still growing, still slight, and lacked the box-to-box energy Guardiola's system demanded. While others accelerated into Pep's mold, Palmer often felt like he was standing still, unprepared for the football City required. Then came the long-awaited door. In September 2020, Guardiola gave Palmer his senior debut in the EFL Cup against Burnley. He handled it with composure, efficiency, and maturity beyond his years. For a moment, Palmer thought he had arrived, that all the waiting, all the doubts, had been worth it. But football is cruel. That first breakthrough rarely means permanence. More often, it's a test. After his debut, Palmer was quickly dropped again, lost in the shuffle. The back-and-forth cycle began, one that could crush even the strongest players. From 2020 to 2022, Palmer's career was a maddening paradox. One week he was a first-team benchwarmer under Pep, the next he was scoring hat-tricks for the U21s. He would train alongside Kevin De Bruyne, then fail to even make the squad list. He could feature in an FA Cup tie, make headlines, then vanish from the picture for weeks. He was praised as the next big thing on podcasts and interviews, then quietly forgotten again. It was instability at its worst, good enough to belong, but never guaranteed a place. For many young footballers, that's where the dream ends. The doubts creep in, confidence fades, and they break. But Cole Palmer didn't. He didn't lash out at Pep, didn't go to the press, didn't demand a loan or a transfer. His patience was deliberate. He showed up every single day, scored when asked, assisted when he could, trained as hard as anyone, and never complained. In a football culture obsessed with instant gratification, Palmer was the opposite. He treated waiting as part of his education. He studied the game, refined his first touch, learned new positions, and adjusted his movements to meet Guardiola's demands. Slowly, that quiet patience turned into trust. When Manchester City launched their historic treble run, Palmer was there. A boy who once dreamed of Manchester United, who sacrificed childhood allegiance for a professional career, was now part of a squad that matched the glory of United's most iconic season. He wasn't a star, but he wasn't just a spectator either. He played minutes, contributed in training, and lifted trophies alongside legends. He didn't just watch history happen, he lived it. He became part of it. Yet even with the medals and memories, doubts still lingered. Palmer remained on the fringes, drifting in and out of squads. He scored in the FA Cup, made cameos in the League Cup, even had flashes of brilliance like his goal against Burnley in the quarterfinals. But deep down, the feeling remained: he wasn't a central piece of City's machine. He was present, but not permanent. He had achieved what many dream of, but it wasn't yet enough to secure his place. By the summer of 2023, Cole Palmer had already achieved what most young footballers can only dream of. He was part of Manchester City's treble-winning squad, celebrating under the lights of Istanbul. Barely weeks later, he stood on another stage, deciding the European Under-21 final for England with a deflected free kick that sealed the trophy. 2 finals. 2 medals. Both in the space of a month. For a 21-year-old from Withershaw, it felt like a fairy tale. But Palmer wasn't satisfied. He wanted more. He knew he had more. And now, he needed the stage to prove it. But football doesn't live in the past. Every new season resets the story. For Palmer, the question was minutes. With Riyad Mahrez gone, Pep Guardiola assured him of opportunities. Then City went out and signed Jeremy Doku on top of already having Grealish and Foden. The message felt muddled. For Palmer, though, the clarity was brutal. If you're truly central to the plan, they don't spend big money on players who play in your positions. The writing was on the wall. Stay, and he'd be a gap filler. Leave, and he could lead. It wasn't an easy choice. Manchester was home. His mates, his family, the streets that raised him. London felt alien, too far, too different, like a move to another world. But Chelsea's call was different. They weren't asking him to compete for a spot. They dropped £40 million on him. In a squad that had already blown over $1 billion on Enzo Fernandez, Moises Caicedo, and Mikhailo Mudryk, they weren't buying depth. They were buying belief. They wanted Palmer to run the show. Pep didn't block the move. Not because he didn't rate Palmer, Guardiola had praised his talent repeatedly, but because he understood. At City, competition was merciless. Even brilliant players were reduced to 10-minute cameos and cup starts. Pep knew Palmer wanted more, and maybe deep down he knew the kid needed to go and prove himself elsewhere. So it happened quickly. One moment Palmer was in training at the Etihad. The next, he was in the group chat sending his goodbye. 2 words, "I'm gone." No emotional speeches. No farewell tour. A sharp cut. A new chapter. The move from Manchester to Chelsea wasn't just geography. It was a complete shift in pressure. At City, winning was routine. At Chelsea, after $1 billion spent, winning was demanded. The scrutiny was harsher, the noise louder, the lights brighter. Many thought Palmer would drown in it, just another expensive name, another benchwarmer in a bloated squad. But from his very first Premier League start, it was clear, Cole Palmer hadn't come to sit down. He had come to take over. By the end of his debut season, his numbers were astonishing. 27 goals and 15 assists in all competitions. 22 goals and 11 assists in just 33 Premier League games, output that rivaled Ballon d'Or contenders. He scored the fastest perfect hat-trick in Premier League history against Everton. Left foot, right foot, header, all in one half. He joined an elite club of players with 20-plus goals and 10-plus assists in a single Premier League campaign, alongside Thierry Henry, Mohamed Salah, and Harry Kane. From the penalty spot, he was flawless. 9 taken, 9 scored. His stoppage-time penalty against Manchester City in a 4-4 thriller wasn't just a goal, it was a statement to his old club. Against Manchester United, his cool one-on-one finish past Onana felt personal. Week after week, Palmer became Chelsea's heartbeat. Their go-to man. The one who dragged them into games, the one who refused to let them sink. The nickname, Cold Palmer, wasn't a PR gimmick. It was earned. It came from those ice-cold celebrations, the shiver gesture, the calm look, the attitude of, "This is normal." He didn't scream, he didn't chase headlines. He simply delivered. By season's end, the recognition poured in. Premier League Young Player of the Season. PFA Fans Player of the Year. Awards that proved his season wasn't luck, but dominance. What made it even more remarkable was how he stayed the same. No over-celebrations, no ego, no forced moments. Just cold efficiency. Did he regret leaving City? Not for a second. The answer was obvious. Every goal, every assist, every night under Stamford Bridge lights proved it. City had their reasons, Pep had his plan, but Palmer had his own path. And he was walking it with the same ruthless calm that defined him since childhood. This wasn't just a strong debut season. This was the birth of a new star. Not the kind that flickers, but the kind that burns so bright it blinds you, forces you to notice. The skinny kid once written off as too fragile for the Premier League is now its most fearless young leader. Chelsea didn't just buy a player. They bought a phenomenon. And the league. They've been warned. At the end of the 2024-25 season, football witnessed a moment that felt like a script pulled straight from fiction. In the grand stage of the FIFA Club World Cup final, Chelsea, the supposed underdogs, stood toe-to-toe with PSG's Galacticos, the reigning Champions League winners who were tipped to dominate. And yet, when the dust settled, one name lit up the night sky: Cole Palmer. 2 goals, 1 assist, and a golden ball in his hands. Chelsea fans stood in disbelief, PSG fans sat in silence, and the wider football world was left stunned. But if you truly want to understand how Palmer reached that summit, you need to rewind, because the journey is what made the moment legendary. By the summer of 2024, Palmer wasn't just a rising star. He was carrying the weight of expectation into the biggest international stage of his career, Euro 2024. England had the squad, the momentum, and the hunger. Palmer's task was simple on paper but heavy in reality: change games when it mattered. And he did. In the semi-final against the Netherlands, with the tension suffocating and the clock bleeding out, Southgate looked down the bench and pointed to Palmer. 10 minutes left. Palmer didn't blink. 1 razor-sharp touch, 1 killer pass, Ollie Watkins buried it. England in the final. But football is cruel. Against Spain in the decider, Palmer sat until the 70th minute. England were trailing 1-0. Within 3 minutes of stepping onto the pitch, Palmer equalized with ice in his veins. For a heartbeat, destiny felt real. Then Oyarzabal shattered it in the 87th. No confetti. No glory. Just silver. Palmer walked off the pitch with frustration in his eyes, but with something far more dangerous burning inside: fuel. Back at Chelsea, that fire turned into dominance. The club handed him a 9-year contract, not just security, but a statement: "We're building this around you." Palmer responded like only special players do. August brought goal of the month with a rocket against Wolves. September delivered the impossible: 4 goals in one half against Brighton, a stat that looked more like PlayStation than Premier League. From there, he wasn't just breaking records, he was bending them to his will. Fastest Chelsea player since Hasselbank to hit 30 league goals. A flawless penalty streak, 12 out of 12, surpassing Yaya Touré's mark. The most goal contributions in a calendar year in Chelsea's Premier League history. Palmer wasn't following legends, he was outpacing them. Then came May 2025, UEFA Conference League Final. Chelsea vs Real Betis. Palmer turned conductor, orchestrating 2 assists, lifting man of the match, and guiding Chelsea to become the first club in history to win all 4 major European trophies. Any normal season, that would have been the crescendo. But Palmer? He wasn't finished. A month later, the Club World Cup final against PSG's super team: Mbappe, Vitinha, Hakimi, the lot. The stage was built for Paris. Palmer ripped the script to shreds. 2 goals. 1 assist. PSG humbled. Chelsea crowned. The golden ball in his hands. He wasn't just playing football, he was painting it. And every camera angle cut back to Manchester City fans muttering the same painful question: why did we let him go? Because when City signed Doku and Kovacic, they told Palmer with actions, not words: "We don't need you." Pep promised minutes, but Palmer knew better. At City, he'd always be an option. At Chelsea, he became the man. Did he regret leaving? Look at the medals. Look at the stats. Look at his grin as he lifted that golden trophy. The only regrets belonged to those in sky blue. Palmer's 2024-25 season wasn't just impressive. It was a warning to world football: Cole Palmer is here, and he's not slowing down. And when you zoom out on his story, it feels poetic. This isn't the tale of a powerhouse athlete bulldozing his way to glory. Palmer is wiry, almost nonchalant in his movements. He doesn't roar past defenders with pace or bulldoze them with strength. Instead, he dismantles them with timing, vision, and a calm brilliance that feels inevitable. And that all traces back to those cold Manchester mornings, with his father Jermaine drilling technique, repetition, patience. When the late growth spurt finally came, Palmer's years of technical mastery suddenly had a sharper, taller frame to operate within, and the game bent to his will. From City's rejection to Chelsea's embrace, from bench cameos at Euro 2024 to dominating PSG under the lights, Palmer's rise isn't a sprint. It's a climb, patient, methodical, relentless. And that's the beauty. He doesn't need brute force. He has something far rarer: footballing intelligence, icy composure, and the quiet confidence that the ball will always find him, and when it does, the rest will take care of itself. Years from now, people won't just remember Cole Palmer as a Chelsea star. They'll remember him as the lad who proved that in an era obsessed with pace and power, pure technique and ruthless intelligence still reigned supreme. He didn't just beat defenders. He outthought them, outplayed them, and left them grasping at shadows. That, my friends, is modern-day brilliance.